Throughout the years, I've kept a list of some common Scrum myths that my clients and I have encountered when working with Scrum teams. I say myths because they all seem to come from either a partial understanding of Scrum or a complete misunderstanding of Scrum and Agile. In this video, we're going to talk about these common Scrum myths and how to handle them with real-life examples. Let's start with the sprint itself. Myth number one, the purpose of a sprint is to complete everything in the sprint backlog. If you read the Scrum guide as a complete body of work, you'll realize that the heart of Scrum is to produce a working increment, quality and valuable working increment at least once per sprint. And this is done continuously throughout the sprint. But I believe that is a technique only, a technique to fulfill the real purpose of Scrum, which is to bring consistency and predictability to the work done by the developers so that we can make empirical based decisions based on empirical evidence. Myth number two, the team must commit in advance to what they want to deliver in the sprint. If the team fails to do so, it's the team's fault. Forcing the team to commit on a certain amount of work to be done in the sprint limits the ability of a team to react to new learnings, threatens work-life balance of a team, and often forces the team to reduce quality of deliverables to meet these deadlines. That's not Agile. That's not Scrum. If you read the Scrum guide, the closest thing to a commitment made by the team is the sprint goal, which is a single objective for the sprint defined by the team in the sprint planning. Myth number three, the Scrum team should limit contact with people outside of the team so that they can remain focused on the sprint goal. This statement most probably comes from the need of a Scrum Master to shield the developers, shield the team from outsiders, outside stakeholders, and even for product owners so that they can remain focused on actual work, the sprint goal. But remember, Agile principle number four, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. And by business people, they mean the stakeholders, the product owner, and even the customers. Work together every single day, simply because it's too easy to get the wrong requirements, the wrong understanding of what the business needs and wants. Too easy to get this wrong from developers if you don't communicate. That's why you need to communicate every single day to ensure that you're building the right things for the customers. Let's move to the sprint planning. Myth number four, the sprint planning is optional for a product owner as long as there's enough ready work to begin the sprint. The sprint planning is a team event. The entire team, the product owner, the developers, the Scrum Master should attend and collaborate during this event. The product owner will craft a good sprint goal for the team, clarify the work that needs to be done, and also answer questions with regards to the plan that the team has decided to commit on, sort of what will be done in the sprint with regards to the work, what will be delivered in the sprint. The product owner needs to clarify, answer questions, and ensure that all these things that we said we would do will meet the expectations of a customer. Because at the end of the day, we want to satisfy the customer. Myth number five is the product owner that decides how much work, in terms of user stories, in terms of tasks, that the team will do in the next sprint. We already talked about that the product owner crafts a good sprint goal and is here to answer questions and ensure that what we are trying to build will satisfy the customer. That's it. The developers will work on and define a sprint backlog based on empirical evidence, the velocity, how they estimate their work, the past data, what they did previous sprints. They use all this data to know approximately how much work they will be able to take in the next sprint together with estimations and all that. It's the developers that decide how much work they will take in the next sprint, not the product owner. The product owner is here to prioritize the work, define a sprint goal. That's it. Next, let's move to the daily Scrum. Myth number six, the primary goal of a daily Scrum is for stakeholders to get the status of work, to see the team making progress. A daily Scrum is not a status meeting. Obviously, Stakeholders can attend. As observers, they can attend. No one is blocking them from doing that. But the purpose of a daily Scrum is to inspect the progress towards the sprint goal. For the team to inspect the progress towards the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog if required. The daily Scrum is for the developers, by the developers. It's their session. The product owner, stakeholders, even the Scrum Master not required to attend. The developers shouldn't come to this meeting and give status to these people. No, the developers craft the plan for the day to get closer to the sprint goal. It's their session. Myth number 7, it's not a big deal if a developer is working on something that's not visible on the Scrum board and the developer is not sharing this in the daily Scrum. It's a big deal. What is the developer working on? A user story, a task, unplanned work? Why is it not on the Scrum board? Remember the goal of a sprint. A single objective, the sprint goal. Everyone in the Scrum team should be working towards getting closer and completing the sprint goal. The developers, everyone, it's a single team, a single unit, collaboration. Everyone is working together. Once the sprint goal is completed, you can tackle lower priority items from the sprint backlog. But this item, is it in the sprint backlog? I hope so. Why is this item not visible? We are working as a team, so please work as a team. Work on priority items only. Complete the sprint goal and work together. Collaborate with a team and make things visible so that we can easily see who is working on what and who is collaborating and who needs help. Next, let's move to a sprint review. Myth number 8, the team should claim partial credit for incomplete backlog items and re-estimate the carried over backlog items for the next sprint. Really? Why are we using velocity? Why are you estimating story points? Why are you doing that? To measure progress? No. Forecasting, planning purposes. Let's say in 3 months you need to plan something. You need to know how much work you can deliver in the next 3 months. Maybe you're doing a quarterly planning. How much work you can get done in 3 months. How can you measure this if when you're using your velocity, you're measuring partially done work? When using this partially done to try to figure out how much work you can get done in 3 months, doesn't make sense. Done work needs to be compared to done work, not partially done work. And even that velocity is not measured, is not used to measure progress. Obviously not. Agile principle number 7. The primary measure of progress is a working increment, working software, valuable things that we're delivering every sprint. Use this to measure, not velocity, not story points. Myth number 9, the stakeholders should use the sprint review to criticize the team if they have not completed all the work in the sprint backlog. Feedback is important. Feedback is extremely important in the sprint review. Feedback on how the team is performing and also the product, what is being demoed, the increment of a sprint. Feedback from stakeholders is extremely important, but there's a way to give feedback. Don't criticize the team because obviously the team will be demotivated. They will be demotivated and they might start producing lower quality work. That's not the goal. We need to remain, quality needs to remain constant throughout all the sprints, throughout the project. Quality is extremely important. The feedback, the most important feedback that the stakeholders need to give is on the product. Is the product meeting the expectations of the customers? That's what we want to hear. A better question to ask the stakeholders is how can they help? Maybe they can help us to get things done. Maybe we couldn't complete the items in the sprint backlog because we had some impediments that they could have helped resolved. So instead of criticizing the team, help the team. And last, let's talk about the sprint retrospective. Myth number 10, the stakeholders can attend the sprint retrospective to give feedback to the team. I see this very often, stakeholders attending the sprint retrospective, especially managers, or they want the minutes of meeting of a sprint retrospective. That's no. A sprint retrospective is private to the team. Private session for the team. Only the Scrum team can attend their own sprint retrospective. Even all the discussions, all the actions, all the agreements that are taken in the sprint retrospective should remain private to the team, not shared to anyone else. Myth number 11, the team can just skip the sprint retrospective if they are too busy. Nope. The sprint retrospective needs to be done every single sprint. At the end of a sprint, you can reschedule the meeting by 1 or 2 hours because, let's say, most of the team members are busy. That's okay, but don't cancel it. That's an opportunity in the sprint, every single sprint, for continuous improvement with regards to interactions, processes, tools, and subsequently, the product. It helps build the product because people are growing, people are continuously improving. If people feel that they want to skip the sprint retrospective, that's a priority issue. Maybe they don't feel that it's important or it's not bringing value. If you're a Scrum Master watching this, really ask questions. Ask the team, why do they feel that it's not bringing value? Why do they feel that we can just skip it? Ask them. And this in itself, this issue in itself is a great topic to talk about in the sprint retrospective. So please do it and don't skip it. Which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips, insights on Agile, Scrum, personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now. And I'll see you in a few seconds.